Let's talk about low-code, no-code.
He built it all with no code.
Is it going to put my freelancing career on hold because now companies can build things with no code?
Today, we're going to build an app all in 24 hours for real and with no code.
No-code app development is a trap.
FlutterFlow is often described as a no-code tool, but we hate that. So in this video, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with the term no-code and no-code tools, and then explain what FlutterFlow actually is. And there are two main things that are wrong about the term no-code. First, wrong focus. We've never had a conversation like, hey, our users are writing too much code. We need to stop that. Our goal is to help people build great products, and we do that by providing an intuitive and efficient interface. Writing less code is a byproduct of the goal, not the goal itself. Writing less code or no code has never been the goal. It's kind of like how the invention of the car wasn't about the no horses movement. And there are some parts of building great products where code is the best interface for it. You see, long ago in the annals of computing history, it was decided that the best interface for building applications was an ASCII character set. And there were reasons and constraints for why that was. But as technology has progressed, we haven't questioned that decision. But think about it. Forget everything you know about coding and ask yourself, what's the best interface for building apps? Should we use letters? Sure. Numbers? Yeah. Colors? Well, yeah, that's like syntax highlighting. What about pop-ups? Contextual menus that give you options to complete what you started writing. Oh yeah, you mean auto-completion? Yeah. What about shapes? Maybe we take that autocomplete menu and give it some more legible icons. And you're building an app that has a user interface, so maybe the app itself would be a better interface than just letters. This way, you could select an element and immediately see all its properties. Or when you want to execute some logic, you can simply add an action and visually see the execution flow. You see, it's so obvious it's been under our noses the entire time. The interface of the app should be included in the app development interface. This is the same movement from a command line interface to a graphical user interface. When the graphical user interface was developed, the goal wasn't about writing fewer characters, but about what's the best interface for doing things like exploring files and folders, moving them around, opening them. And it turns out that for many operations, having a 2D canvas with a free-floating cursor, or what we now call a mouse, is extremely powerful. We started with just text, and over the years we keep adding additional elements to the app development interface. And why would we think that we're done? FlutterFlow is the next step in that progression. A visual development platform that provides a richer experience for most development needs. Okay, that's the first reason. The second reason is bad company. No-code garners both the highest praise and the lowest disdain, and the disdain is often earned. The critics will say that no-code doesn't scale, has terrible performance, an inability to customize, and produces spaghetti code. And to be honest, they're often right. But there's one critical distinction between FlutterFlow and those apps: the level of abstraction. That is, SaaS applications that don't scale, have terrible performance, and lack customizability are typically high abstractions. That means that the buttons in the app are far away from what the code is doing under the hood. Typically, this means that the buttons in the app will have really user-friendly names like fill the screen or move to the right, but the underlying code is often verbose and brittle. FlutterFlow is designed as a low abstraction interface. This means that the buttons and widgets in our app corresponds often one-to-one with the underlying widgets in the Flutter API. So if you drop in a container widget and inspect the code, it's just a Flutter container. A column is just a column. Far from trying to hide the underlying technology, we surface it. It's literally in our name, FlutterFlow. So the question to ask is not low code or no code, but what's the abstraction level? Okay, so if FlutterFlow is not a no-code platform, then what is it? Well, we like to call it a visual development platform. And this involves 5 points. First, a visual interface. We want to create the next iteration of the development interface. This allows you to see your app in real time, visually select widgets, navigate through your widget tree, and find and set widget properties. Second, core setup. Like it or not, 80% of a developer's time is spent on boilerplate, setting up authentication, routing, and localization. For many of these common features that every app has, FlutterFlow takes care of it. You can think about this as the next iteration of auto-completion. This gives you back your time so you can spend it on more fine-grained customization where your skills are best used. Third, seamless collaboration and deployment. FlutterFlow allows you to start building immediately without having to handle local setup, SDK installation, or package management. You can simply hop on the web and start developing. This also means that sharing demos and collaborating can be done with a simple URL, no setup required. And when it's time to deploy, FlutterFlow combines both the power of Flutter's cross-platform app generation to produce native binaries for web, iOS, and Android, as well as deployment pipelines with CodeMagic for mobile apps and Google Cloud servers for web deployment. Fourth, developer enhancements. As a layer on top of Flutter, FlutterFlow provides a number of developer enhancements. You can think of us like TypeScript to JavaScript. We're not only trying to provide the best low abstraction interface, but to add additional enhancements. For instance, here's two. Firestore doesn't natively support enums as a data type. Our users wanted them, so we added support. Of course, this is not a feature in Firestore, so if you look at your collection, that enum will just be a string. But FlutterFlow will ensure that wherever enums are used in your application, they will safely follow the type definition. Or second, automatic schema generation. When you make an API call and receive back the response, you can drop that JSON into FlutterFlow and it will automatically create the data model. Okay, fifth and final point, control and ownership. As a low abstraction interface, we expose almost every widget property and most of the commonly used widgets. This means that you have fine-grained control to design complex and expressive applications without having to work within an opinionated framework. And if FlutterFlow doesn't provide the widgets you need, we have built-in support for custom functions and widgets. And all that code you write in the visual platform you own. It's your intellectual property. And if you want to export it and continue the development or deployment elsewhere, you are free to do so. Okay, so here's how I think about the big picture. FlutterFlow is balanced in the center of two extremes. Think about tools for building applications on a continuum of abstraction. On the lowest level, you have things like machine code and platform APIs like graphics APIs. And while you have a high degree of customization, they're really difficult and slow to work with. On the highest level of abstraction, you gain ease of use and speed, but give up customization and scalability. But right in the middle, there's a balance where you have both granular control and ease of use. And this is honestly what makes describing FlutterFlow so difficult. Because depending on who you are and what your role and questions are, communicating what FlutterFlow is will be different. To a developer who says, why don't you just write the code? We say FlutterFlow is simply the next step in the great tradition of technological progress. Because technological progress has always been about mastering lower level technologies and then building the next layer, one abstraction layer above. Early in computing, many were building compilers because everyone knows real programmers write compilers. Almost no one today is building compilers. This is just technological progress. For instance, think about the car. To get to the higher level abstraction technology of the car, we first had to master the lower levels of rubber, metallurgy, glass, electricity, and the combustion engine. But once we could design those lower levels, we can move up to the next level and create that great machine, the car. But to the higher level abstraction person thinking that FlutterFlow is just another no-code platform, that misunderstands the goal and the design of FlutterFlow. That is, that it's designed as a low abstraction to give users access to lower level technologies, but with a visual interface, designed for ease of use. That's FlutterFlow, balanced right in the middle. So, welcome to the future, the next iteration of application development. Welcome to FlutterFlow.